Welcome to Decode, a podcast that delves into the complex world of K-12 computer science education, highlighting the significance of storytelling in comprehending educational data.
Blain, Juan, hey, welcome. Everyone who's joined our LinkedIn live feed, welcome to episode 1 of Decode. I'm your host, Stanley Buchesky, CEO of PyTop, and we're going to be talking about access and equity in computer science, and specifically policy in California as well as nationally. So you might be wondering what is Decode and why, and just a little bit of background on this is really came about as a result of conversations with superintendents where this word equity has been repeatedly surfacing. And the question that I've been getting very often is, what are you going to do what are you doing to create equity in computer science? And so as I looked at the data on gender and racial participation in computer science education, there were these massive disparities. It was just very disheartening, but some of the data didn't make sense to me. And it seemed like every person that I asked had a different viewpoint on the data. And so it made me think actually my first year at West Point Cadet, where they break you down and then they rebuild you. They force you to unlearn certain things you thought were true and then to relearn other things to help you become a better leader. So Decode is an effort to unlearn some biases, seek some truth, and find some solutions so we can provide CS education to all kids. So Blain and Juan, I'm so grateful to you guys today to be able to join me and to kind of kick around some of these issues and try to make some sense of the data. You know, we're talking about access versus equity, and they're kind of esoteric words, or they're education-ish words used slightly differently. You know, just trying to understand, what does that mean to you and your role, and how did you get where you are now? I just wanted to start with Blain. If you'd like to give a quick intro, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stanley, and welcome, Juan. I'm really excited to be here with you today, Stanley. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this conversation, kind of a fireside chat, just talking about what we feel and see, what we're calling out as an equity challenge, right, related to access for students in California to computer science education. I want to, before I introduce myself, I just really wanted to highlight and underscore what you mentioned earlier about this idea of equity. And I know we're going to be grounding ourselves in a definition of equity, but I just wanted to share my own professional and personal understanding of equity as an operational definition. Yes, I'm the equity officer in ABC Unified School District here in Los Angeles County. And when I think about equity, I think about making sure that each child receives what they need to develop, both academically, socially, and professionally, to reach their full potential. And when I think about this idea of computer science education, is the access there to make sure students can achieve their full professional and academic potential 10 to 15 years from now in their professional career? Situating myself in high school, thinking about kids when we want to introduce the idea of computer science potentially much earlier could happen, I know. But, in my conceptual understanding of how computer science has been delivered, I think about kids coming out of middle and high school and what that looks like for them professionally. Like Stanley said, my name is Blain Watson. I am the equity officer in ABC Unified, been a principal, assistant principal. I've worked as a consultant in several scenarios, supporting organizations and leaders and developing professional capacity and teachers. I'm really honored to be here today. There's a lot of other things I can mention, but I will say I'm also very fond of Dr. Santos. He and I are professional colleagues and friends, so I'm happy that he is part of this conversation. If anybody's going to talk about this conversation with me and Stanley, I feel honored that Juan is here with us.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Blain.
Yeah, Dr. Juan Santos. Again, super grateful to have you here. Ventura County Assistant Superintendent of HR, but very exciting, President of CALSA, the California Association of Latino Superintendents and Administrators, and lots of things going on with CALSA as well. So we can kind of jump into that as well as part of some of the things you're doing. But would love to hear a little bit of your thoughts as well.
For me, first, I'm just blessed with this opportunity. So thank you for the invitation. Juan Santos, I'm a husband, a son, a learner, for lack of better words. I being a father, I want to provide my kids the opportunity to really access things that I didn't have. And so I think this is just a great opportunity. When you ask for a definition, it's always great for us to understand who we are, where we come from, really ground ourselves. So whenever I think of equity, I say almost the same exact thing as Blain would say. It's providing access and support for those, for lack of better words, marginalized persons to realize their personal best. I often use the motto, be your best. And in short, liberating them, and eradicating any systemic, cultural, and institutional forms of oppression that's out there. So that's when I think of equity, what it's about. I often laugh because it relates to me to when people often say, well, we want to make sure we use English language learner instruction. And I'm thinking that's just good teaching, good instruction. We're all learning English. So whenever I think of equity, it's what's the best for all of us to get an understanding so that we can just be better. So, as mentioned before, I'm the president-elect for CALSA. Excited about this opportunity. We're actually speaking a lot about equity, and we're speaking a lot about technology at our upcoming conference, February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd in beautiful San Jose. And again, on calsa.org, definitely, if you haven't yet heard about us, definitely look it up, calsa.org. But we want to invite everybody as our guest and find out. We're trying to maximize everyone's potential, which is what we're talking about here with equity, and especially access.
Yeah, there's so some of the interesting things that I was looking at kind of over the past couple of months around access versus equity comes down to a lot of the there's been a lot of legislation that's come out from the various states around computer science, and code.org has been a really great leader in that, an advocacy organization around it. And so I've seen there have been a lot of states that have mandated the teaching of computer science and such. And some of the interesting data disparities, though, have been some states have I don't know, if I were to distinguish between access and equity, I kind of think about access means it's offered, so you got the chance to take it. Equity kind of to me is around I tend to equate it with enrollment, and it's a really fine point of like, if it's offered, why isn't everybody taking it? So I want to dig into that a little bit, but first I wanted to kind of look at the national data, right? We've got so far there have been 30 states that have passed legislation requiring schools to offer computer science. 8 of the states have passed legislation making it a graduation requirement. So you have to take it in order to finish high school. California, the technology innovation center of the world, where people go to be a part of like the most cutting edge technology companies. Yet neither one of those is legislation that's passed in the state. So we're not even offering people the opportunity to learn the skills needed to be a part of those big companies. Blain, you had asked about kind of proposed legislation, but like, how do you make sense of that? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. So when you mentioned there are 27 other states that are offering computer science as a graduation requirement, obviously that's a remarkable feat. I think that's an important thing. But the first thing that pops into my head when I think about the disparity is, what are they not offering? Right. And I don't want to, we're here advocating for computer science, but it's also important to consider all the different nuances that we have to consider when we think about student needs, when we think about master scheduling, as a site leader, working as a district leaders, thinking about the master schedule of the school site and your budget. Your master schedule basically dictates what you're offering and the values that your organization or the school site is built upon, right? And so I'm not saying, nor am I thinking that legislators of the state of California, in the state of California at the top are saying or even thinking that computer science isn't important. I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is there are other initiatives, there are other priorities in the state that are being offered to our children. and right now they've been mandated, right? Like, for example, we have an upcoming ethnic studies graduation requirement that all schools across the state of California will be required to take. And I wonder, in those other 27 states, which of those 27 states are also going to be offering and mandating ethnic studies?
Definitely a trade-off.
Yeah. And I think ethnic studies is a very important initiative, right? To make sure, again, talk about equity, to make sure kids feel seen, heard, and valued in terms of their culture and their identity and their ethnicity. That's very important. And how we're teaching history, how we're teaching the structures of our society, that's important for kids to understand. But when we talk about access, all right, and I like what you said earlier. I wrote down what you said in your research, Stanley. You've been talking about this idea, course offering versus enrollment. And when I think about offering a course, that's great. I can have a course offered in my master's schedule. But enrolling a child in that class, knowing that this class would potentially inspire and empower them to become more than they are currently, is an important skill, an important personal approach that every school site leader, teachers, and counselors are considering when we're thinking about programming for students in the classroom. So I don't want to argue that computer science is not something that legislators in the state of California, just to be clear for our audience, our state of California, right? Our legislators determine the curriculum and course offerings. And so it's important for us to think about the political challenges that may exist, despite being hugely influenced by technology, being the technology hub of the country or even the world in California. There are also different political challenges that we face, and policymakers specifically when they're thinking about course offerings and how that looks on the ground level with schools and with leaders and families.
You know what? I'll jump in there, Blain, because I also, to support California, I know that we have our standards. The curriculum standards and our strategic plan were introduced in 2018. And I know recently we've had the Assembly Bill 1251 that kind of really pushes an emphasis on, let's get this going. Let's streamline this process out there. So now I know there's a reinvigoration of trying to get the computer sciences going. And, at least we're off to something. And, to say that, to look at the positive is we're moving in that direction. So now how do we increase those class offerings? And you're right, Blain, without taking away the ethnic studies, without taking away the language requirements. We can continue to add, but I think Blain nailed it on the head. It's a sense of belonging. I mean, once you see yourself in the schools, once you see yourself with the teachers, once you see your curriculum starting to look like something you use on a regular, everyday basis, there's going to be disengagement. And we want to make sure we engage our students by having the right technology, the right teachers, just really the right mindset.
We were talking the other day, something I wrote this down too. Juan, you'd said, if we're not relevant in school, why should they even pay attention? Right. So like there's an onus on us around, I guess, we're talking about what are you going to use your money for and how are you going to schedule it? And that's not the legislator, right? That's the school leader. Choosing what they're going to prioritize. And, the ethnic studies and that you're talking about, Blain, just super interesting to me, right? Because I never had a course like that when I was a kid. But it really makes me think about the disparity. Like if in a lot of schools it is offered, but the kids are choosing not to take it. So is it because it's boring? Is it like what are the biases there, right? And did the ethnic studies, as a priority, is that something that really, giving kids confidence to be themselves, kind of translate to confidence to engage in something like computer science?
I think so. I think anytime you engage kids on a personal and relevant level, something that connects them to their culture and to their identity, especially students, we're in terms of child development, we're actively engaged in the formation of our youth. And so if we're not giving them an opportunity to think of and study who they are and see themselves relevantly positioned in positions of power, right? Or they study the true nuances and intricacies of why people who look like them have not been placed in positions of power and what that looks like historically. I think that can empower, future generations of people to think about themselves differently. And now when we talk about computer science as a vehicle, right, to empowerment, I think that's what we have to consider. When I was a principal in Compton Unified at Dominguez High School, definitely want to plug our Dons over there at Dominguez High School. I love the Don community. When we were there, we offered a computer science course and also AP computer science. And I think that was connected to an idea we had in our CTE program or our career technical education design, right? And so we wanted to make sure kids had exposure to different computer science programming. And then I think the other part of this, I guess the cultural relevance that we want to see in computer science is in the curriculum, but also in the pedagogy, how we teach the curriculum. What type of coding platforms are we using? Are they relevant? Do kids see that? Like, kids love gaming, right? Is that something that's inspiring them to do their current work and then see themselves in the future? I think that can be something. That's what we did, right? I was lucky and we were blessed to find a teacher, Mr. O, who is he is a gamer by, I want to say, aficionado, right? But also very
a really cool guy that you just kind of dream of getting a guy like this as a teacher.
A unicorn. I would say a unicorn, Stanley, and not just that, but a male teacher, a male African-American male teaching computer science. And we don't find a lot of Black males or males of color teaching many science courses, right? Or even math courses. And we know what the research says about the connection students can make and the empowerment students feel by being exposed to teachers of color, especially males of color. But let me digress, right? We're here to talk about the idea of computer science.
It's a really critical question too, right? Because, Juan, you just mentioned this bill that's on the table in California. We were digging that up. I think Assemblyman Mark Berman introduced legislation to mandate computer science in high schools. But it's interesting as we go around and talk with schools about computer science and implementing it. Talking about teachers, just teachers in general. Historically, it's been kind of a computer science teacher or an early adopter, or a school that's got this just a really dedicated person like you had, Blain, or really good funding. But if you thought it was hard to find a computer science teacher before all these mandates, there's none to be had now. Like, I mean, Juan, how does that, like, just from a hiring, HR, retention perspective?
From the HR perspective, just thinking about that, I mean, there's, just so we know and we're clear, there's three ways for one to become a teacher. And if they have the skill set, and I'm not going to, it's not for everyone. This is an art form. That's why I said there's a capacity here where we could convert our teachers to teach this information, but you have the CTE work experience. So you have anybody out there, and if anybody's watching this and they're in the computer world and they're looking to really impact lives, we want you. Just, we'll help you do that. We can teach you the art because you have a skill set. The second way is if you have a math or business or industrial technology credential, you have that, you can go ahead and you can teach. The reality is it's really hard to find those, as mentioned before by Blain. There's your unicorn. And then there's the person who currently has the credential. They just need 20 credits to computer science. And I think can we convert who we currently have? Our teachers want to use technology. But I think you and I had talked about this before. I mean, we have mandates, we have testing, we have this, we have that. I mean, we're putting, the results. We often say the results. You show me what the results are, I'll show you people working towards those results. The reality is, if we want to continue to be this truly prosperous and inclusive, country, which is what we all want, our future relies on this shared knowledge. And this shared knowledge means providing them access to it. I mean, coding. I have no idea in some cases when I first was introduced what it is. I mean, an embarrassing story here. I didn't even have a home computer until 2003 or 4. And I know my friends laughed at me and they're like, I can't believe that an administrator or a teacher and an attorney, my wife's an attorney, how you can have no technology at home. Now, good Lord, I have more technology and my kids have that, and it's amazing. But
Yeah,
again,
you hit the accelerate button.
yeah, but if you
Point, right?
but access, all that doesn't come unless, we introduce it. We kind of push it on our students because that's the only way that we can get out of the systemic, issues that we're having today.
I had a
Gotta put this
similar
up.
I had a similar experience actually. I was in the Army, right? And funny enough, I majored in computer science engineering at West Point. And then I was an infantry officer. We, affectionately call them ground pounders or grunts. So I wasn't using a computer at all. And it was like 3-4 years. And I finished that. And then I got a similar time frame to you. I got a PC. I didn't even know how to like make it work. I had to completely relearn all over again. And it just makes me think about how quickly, how much technology is just accelerating. Like there's a new technology sooner and sooner and sooner. And I guess no conversation on computer science would be complete without any mention of AI, which is the exciting buzzword today. But what it made me think of is we had one of the guys from Code.org, their head of product is Pat Young-Pratt, and he registered too. So I'm not sure whether he's on or not. But I was looking at some of the things that he was posting, and to California's credit, they were the second state to adopt the teachai.org framework for using AI within schools. My kids' school, I'm asking my kids about. I want to say one of them was asking me, "Hey, Dad, how do I I've got this big fat book here I got to read. I'm like, I need X number of hours." And I'm like, well, why don't you just ask ChatGPT to summarize the chapters for you? And they're like, I can't do that. That's cheating. And turns out it doesn't even matter because it's completely blocked at their school. So anyway, kudos to New York Department of Education California Department of Education for adopting that framework back in September. So more to come on that. I mean, definitely a forward-thinking state. I was just surprised by kind of where they were with legislations of the mandates.
Stanley, real quickly, if you don't mind, I like to go back to what Juan was talking. You asked Juan a question about from an HR perspective, and so just thinking very optimistically, right? Say California does move toward a statewide requirement for computer science for high school. What, in your opinion, Juan, your professional opinion as an HR leader, human resource leader, what would a successful computer science teacher pipeline look like? Where will we recruit? Where will we get teachers? Where will we build that capacity so that we're not always looking for unicorns? Like they're front and center. We know where to find people. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, right? We mentioned that a little while ago. It's one of the biggest challenges, finding people to teach a computer science course.
I as I mentioned, probably I touched on it. I think we already have those teachers. And what I say by that is year after year, because of declining enrollment, we lose many of our teachers, many of our young teachers that are starting in the profession. But I believe in connection, with maybe the universities. I know they're doing some things in the Cal States as well as the UCs and even the community colleges. I think we can bring in some of these individuals to help train our teachers and provide them those units so that that is true professional development. And I think it shouldn't just be computer science by itself. I mean, computer science can be embedded just like English should be embedded in every subject matter, and math. I mean, you often hear, I teach English. No, you teach students. And so I think once we get connection with those universities, Blain, I think once you add that to the mix, as well as, like you said, we're in the tech hub. These companies, we're supposed to be producing what's unfilled out there. I think I read, on Code, 1 million unfilled jobs. Our students, they want jobs, but they want to do something they love. And I think we can provide that by getting these teachers adding this learning because they want to use it too.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're talking about jobs, right? Because, at the end of the day, like the education we're trying to give our kids is so they can get good jobs. And in California, there are 40,000 computer related jobs with an average salary of $153,000 a year. So, when we talk about the why, like that's it. It's right there. And we talk about the teachers. I also loved like the fact that you're talking about industry certifications, right? So pulling people from industry is like a great way. I want to share a slide here just on this is national tech data right here. You look at this and I mean, what do you think when you see this, right? Here's the actual tech employment data. We've got all of these jobs that are unfilled. This is by race and gender. So most of those tech jobs nationally are filled by white males. It's a big drop down to female, a lot of Asian. I want to say Hispanic is either in this other category or two or more races, but this was kind of the reason to be, for me in terms of this podcast is like, what is going on here? Like, why is this disparity so great? And what are some of the things we can do? How do you guys look at this chart? Like,
I think it has everything to do with what we talked about at the beginning of the conversation: bias, institutional bias, personal and professional bias, and that's implicit, right? We have a lot of what we see as a result in these careers, right? And this job data that we're looking at is directly correlated to the bias that we see on the ground in education, right? A lot of our either overrepresentation or underrepresentation of women, right, in these professions, potentially because we don't see as an institution, right? We don't see in place women in many, or young ladies in many more opportunities, right, to be successful, right? We see men traditionally being placed in these positions, right? How do we work to give young ladies more access? How do we work to make sure other people of color, who happen to be women as well, right, more access and opportunities to thrive? So again, it has to do with the political conversation, the values conversation in your organization as a school. And then if there's no statewide mandate for computer science, how do you build it into your program? Advocacy doesn't necessarily have to live at the state level. We can advocate locally to make sure that things are happening for our children, so that we can flip that data on its head.
And being a proud father of a daughter, my oldest, Trinity, little shout out to her.
How old is your oldest?
An 18-year-old senior at her school. And, it's having these conversations with her about not just technology, but just being a woman. I mean, I'm part of the patriarchy. She'll tell you. I mean, she's got this, and very strong, independent woman that's dealing with so much around her. And there's that bias, and it's one of those, we need to emphasize and put it out there. I know for us with CALSA, our emphasis is trying to increase the cabinet level positions for our women of color. I mean, that is specific one of our agenda items to try to focus on. So we have to be intentional. We have to seek results. I think when you look at the 20, we have, the 24%, we need to emphasize getting more women in there. Therefore, how do we do that? We need to make it a point to say we're increasing this number by this percentage. Once you put a number on, you got to go after it. I don't care so much for activities, but more the results.
How do we increase demand though? And I'm asking because because the mandates are supply, like we're going to require supply, but then that doesn't mean that kids are going to still want to take it. And in many states who have that requirement, kids still aren't taking it. And anecdotally, I can say, I've asked a lot of kids about computer science, including my own. I mean, it's like, no, it's just the nerdy kids that are taking that. Is that a bias? Is it accurate? Is it true? or no, that's not for, whatever, it's not for girls, or where are the biases happening, and what are the things that we can do to deconstruct that on the demand side? So in a school, to get a girl interested in computer science, what are the things that we can do to kind of change these biases, or create something on the demand side?
So to try to answer your question, I think that I have two responses to your question. The first one, I think it's challenging. It's not impossible work, but it's very, very challenging and long work to change bias, right? Because you're talking about changing the bias in adults mostly. And then, the bias that adults have toward computer science, and the bias that maybe adults have toward access to computer science is something that has developed, right, and evolved over time in this individual's experience.
Well, and we as parents, we take our biases, and then the kids walk into the school with that false bias.
Yeah. So that was my second response, right? And then working with the children and their families to address the bias that we have to this science course, and then making it super attractive, right? Whenever you introduce any new programming in schools, you have to make sure that you're doing a needs assessment, right? And you have to make sure that you're talking with your community, engaging your community. I would love, if you're thinking about launching, say we have a computer course at a school and we have low enrollment, how do we engage student leaders, kids who are in the class, who kind of, flip the stereotype on the head, right? That they're not just the nerdy kid, right? But a kid who's maybe highly socially influential, a kid who's an athlete, right? How does that kid get in front of other freshmen or middle school kids to talk to them about their successful experience? How do you get industry leaders who work in tech to mentor and work with youth? I think that right there, you can kill two birds with one stone, right? All of our youth need mentoring and support, and they need to work with an adult, and not just their own parent, but other adults who are crazy about them and want to be champions for them. And how do you help them, those industry professionals, then talk to them and maybe do some job shadowing and help them understand that computer science is a very, very wide and long career, right? And there's lots of things that you can do. So I think that's what you do in terms of answering your question about demand. The bias approach is long work, but it has to be intentional work with adults, including parents, who are influencing children's thoughts about computer science. And then secondly, right, how do you advertise? How do you market this program in your school successfully in partnership with industry leaders and community leaders that would support the work on the ground?
And I think you market it even earlier. I think you don't wait till high school. You hit this in elementary. Like, you actually reach out and try to get these kids involved, because all kids, think about it, when they start, they're just a sponge. They want everything. What happens over the course of time is they lose that interest because we're not prepared for that change. And so we need to change that. We need to flip it on its head and say, girls, this is for you. Boom. We need to mandate it from that perspective, in the sense that push the envelope, force these kids into enjoying, have fun with it.
Yeah, interestingly, the legislation that's on the table in California is, I believe, only mandating it in high school if it's passed. And I think that's a big mistake, right? Because by the time you get to high school, you're either in or you're out. Like that ship's kind of set sail. And one of the big things is the AP computer science exam. If your first introduction to computer science isn't until high school, there's almost no way that you're going to be taking the AP computer science exam, which is setting you up for a degree in computer science and getting some extra credits ahead of time. I was looking at the Decode.org has a scorecard for California, and one of the things they track is AP exams taken. And if you look at the population of students in California, it's 56% Hispanic, 21% white, 12% Asian, 5% Black. And when you look at the AP exams taken, they're about 40% of the schools in California are offering computer science. Of the exams taken, 32% were female, so a big disparity there, but not nearly as large as some of the other ones. 23% of the exams taken were Latino versus 56%. when it comes to the Black population. 5% of the student population is Black. 2% are taking the AP exams. So it's a pretty big disparity. But I just love the idea of like connecting it to jobs. And so then you're never going to ask the question like, why am I going to, why am I taking this, right? Well, you're taking it
it's
to
like
get
the
that.
kids when they ask, why am I learning this? You're learning this for $150,000. I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, if we're talking about access, I mean, we're looking at, I mean, I looked at the similar information. I know we offer roughly 45% of our schools offer computer science, but I know the disparity, and I can tell you there is one color that is impacting all this, and it's green. Funding, money invested in schools. I mean, I think I read that the rural schools, they're not getting that opportunity. These classes are not available, depending on the large schools. I'm sure Blain can tell you, from his previous site, they probably created that. I'm from Central California. I didn't have much technology growing up over there. Nevertheless, the teachers, we didn't have that in our schools. That's why we need to flip it in the sense that convince kids why this is interesting or show them their interest. Gaming is, like you said, my kid just created a game in his computer class, and that's what interested him. He can make a beat. He can create that on his phone. That's what it's about. Now, can we convince, we need to advertise more women doing these type of, jobs?
I'd love to find a way to partner with you guys around this. One of the things that when I think about our curriculum, right, it's all hands-on, it's PBL, right? So it's fun and engaging. But the real next step is get a skill and a certification for an actual job that you're going to get. And these are skills that are for jobs that kids can get in high school. There's skills you can do in high school and immediately right after graduation. It'd be really great to partner with businesses that are saying, hey, I need this skill. CNC machine operator, for example. That involves a lot of coding now.
Yeah.
Well, it's even farming. I mean, looking at all that, I mean, that's more than just the jobs that we tend to think are just computer based. I mean, farming now is done through a lot of the technology that we're doing now. I mean, every profession now is tied to a computer science, is tied to the use of technology to improve the services out there. I think we just need to advertise this and show this and push that and push that message. Go ahead, Blain. Sorry for cutting you off.
No, that's fine. Thank you for sharing that one. I was thinking about the question you asked earlier about, and Juan, you were talking about just early exposure. And you're right. The exposure needs to be earlier for all students, especially students of color and young ladies. But back to this idea about PBL, project-based learning, I think, we're not going to get to a point where we're going to mandate computer science as a standalone course in elementary because standalone courses don't exist, right, for elective classes like this in elementary. Best way to do it is to integrate, computer science and technology throughout projects, that are, the standard curriculum, right? You're in your English, your math, your science. How do you integrate courses successfully that engage kids in coding practices and computer application practices, creating their own whatever, right? We need to think very methodically about what that looks like to develop more interest and build more self-efficacy. I think when kids have a higher level of self-efficacy with technology earlier on in their life, right? And this is not research-based. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience and my own children at home, a light bulb goes off and they're like, you know what, I can do this. And I think that progressively, as they're going down the road in their educational experience from K all the way to 12, they're going to have a lot more belief in themselves around how I engage technology, what I can use technology for, how I can use technology to manipulate different things and ideas. I think that's where we want to get with our kids. And I think the real drop the mic idea is, how do you get certification for kids earlier? Not just at the end of high school,
right?
But what type of coding certification can you get for children, and what type of partnerships can we get for kids to actually work in technology earlier as an internship? Whatever. We have to think very outside. We have to think outside the box and not see our kids as like their experience with the workforce is only going to be in the latter years of high school and then after graduation. We have to get kids exposed to careers earlier and applying the skills that we're teaching them for that job much earlier. So again, building this idea of self-efficacy in that career. So That's what I'd love to see, a lot more technology woven in and integrated throughout the curriculum so that kids are building their capacity and their belief in themselves.
So you're talking like not only just the dual enrollment, Blain, you're also talking about certificate, I guess, achievement in schools. I mean, it could start as early as we want, and you could create that. I mean, to me, everything's possible. It's just a matter of, are you willing to do it? Are you willing to try? Are you willing to, for a lack of a better word, make an effort, knowing that it could fall face first, but I can guarantee you this is that you'll get growth. Kids will continue to learn.
I love that I was able to get you two guys to join the show just because of the massive amount of positivity that you have around this, and that's how I want to kind of end this, because we are out of time at this point. But I'd just like to kind of give each of you just maybe a sentence or two around the art of the possible. Like what is the message you want to leave people with, the optimistic side of things that you think we can make happen?
Juan can go first. I want to start here.
No, this is something that I live by. Don't try to be the best version of someone else. Be the best version of you. And if you're interested in that, go for it. You don't have to do like our parents did before, where we worked for the same industry our whole life. Experiment with different jobs, experiment with new curriculum, continue to be a learner, but be the best version of you, be your best.
Thank you, Juan. I knew that would inspire me. So I was thinking about a quote that was one of my mentors gave me a journal book a long time ago when I was a young educator, and it's inspired my leadership philosophy all throughout my career. And you've seen this quote or read this quote before, but it's risk more than others think is safe, care more than others think is wise, dream more than others think is practical, and expect more than others think is possible. If you were to apply this philosophy, right, to computer science, and again, more access and opportunities to students, we have to risk more, and we have to think outside the box more, because we everything is possible for our youth. We are the keepers of opportunity for our kids, and kids are only going to do what we expect of them and only what we offer them. So it is our job to make sure that we're keeping all the opportunities open for them and opening doors. Opening doors. That's what we have to do.
Wow. I love that. I love that.
You inspired me, Blain.
Hey, come on. You went first.
I just want to give you guys a really heartfelt thank you for participating. We're going to continue the exploration here. 2 weeks from now is going to be episode 2. So I hope everyone will have a chance to dial in. We wanted to do this live to invite everybody to participate. And again, thank you so much for joining us, Juan and Blain, and look forward to being in touch and finding some ways to work together to solve these big problems.
Thanks for listening. If you found this conversation valuable, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. We will see you next time on Decode.